and welcome to Italian Cooking for Shut-ins. Today's episode is going to be lasagna, an Italian favorite that is sure to be a crowd pleaser whenever it is that we're allowed to visit our friends and family. So, we'll begin with the usual. I hope you all are having a beautiful day. We're certainly having a beautiful day here. And thinking about the summer get-togethers that hopefully we'll get to enjoy. If not this year, then certainly in the years to come. We like to have a big cookout around Memorial Day, but I don't think it's going to happen this year. But we can look forward to the times when it can, and we don't have to worry about ourselves, our families, loved ones, the people we're seeing. It'll be a carefree time that we will soon come to take for granted once again. All right, so we're gonna see lasagna made from scratch. So I'm gonna make the sauce, and I'm making noodles, and then I will assemble it and show you how it's all put together. For the sauce, if you've watched, well, let me say one thing about the noodles first. I am making the noodles that you have to boil, which takes a lot more work than just buying the no-boil noodles that you find at the grocery store. And it simply is a matter of ordering food from the grocery store and not quite getting what you want. My hope was to demo this with the no-boil because it's so simple. But we ordered our food and we got the boil noodles instead. I won't lie, a lasagna it's a better eating experience with the noodles that you have to boil. It's creamier. It's the no-boil noodles tend to absorb more of the moisture in the lasagna, so it's not quite as saucy. So there is an advantage to having the boil noodles, but they're a pain in the butt, frankly, because you have to keep them from sticking to the pan and sticking to each other, and they're hot and so forth. So a lot of this is going to be off camera, but I'm just sort of babying them here, keeping them stirred in hot water until they cook to an al dente, a slightly firm texture, and then I will take them out and drape them over the side of the pan so that I can lay them in the lasagna dish. And while that's going on, I'm going to make the sauce. And if you've seen any of the other episodes of the kitchen, I start with hot oil in the saucepan and garlic, good healthy dose of garlic. And then I add the three vegetables. The celery, onion, and carrots. And I'm adding these, as I have in the past, to add a little bit of body and flavor to the sauce. In another order from the grocery fail, we ordered turkey that was 85% lean, and we got turkey that is 99% lean. So that is not a very pleasant thing. That's no fat at all, and we like to have a little bit of fat. So we're adding some vegetable matter to at least give it a little more body and flavor. It's also, of course, healthier to have these veggies in here, adding some fiber to the meal. It'll help reduce the glycemic load of the pasta. And I happen to have a ½ pound of ground pork in the freezer as well. So I'm going to mix in the pork with the 1 pound of ground turkey that I'm adding to this. So I'm sauteing up here a healthy dose of garlic, about ½ of a minced onion, and a rather large, half of a really, really large carrot, and a handful of stalks of celery in here. And I'm going to saute these until they're soft, and then add the 1.5 pounds of meat. And we will come back when that's ready. And actually, before these vegetables get soft, I'm actually going to add a 4th vegetable, and that is minced bell pepper. We happen to have a lot of bell peppers right now, and again, my aim here is to add some flavor to the turkey. This dish can be made with any ground meat that you want. Beef, of course, is a favorite. That would be delicious. You could use the sausage pasta sauce that I demoed a few episodes ago, which would be delicious in this lasagna as well. It really, if you have a pasta sauce, a meat pasta sauce in a jar that you really like, you could use that. But this is just some tips to sneak those vegetables in there, get some fiber in there, get some flavor in there, and I'm just such a huge fan of bell pepper that it works for me. All right, we'll be back. All right, so the veggies are soft, and now we're going to add the meat. So this is, as a reminder, 1.5 pounds of meat. I also have quite a few vegetables in here. I've got half of a really large carrot, half of an onion. I have a few stalks of celery minced in there. I have garlic, and then I have about 1.5 bell peppers in there. So there's a lot of stuff in there besides this 1.5 pounds of meat. So if you're not wanting to do the veggies, but you want to have a little more body in your lasagna, my suggestion would be to add 2 pounds of meat. So dump that in there. We've got the turkey and the ground pork. Feel free to mix and match your meats. Let's say you want to have a little bit less fat and fewer calories and lower environmental impact. So you want to do turkey, but you're thinking, I don't know how that's going to taste. You could mix your turkey and beef. That's certainly one way to ease off a little bit on the ground beef if that is your aim. And we will frequently, or that's how we started out doing it. Now we're pretty much straight turkey. So this is the turkey and the pork in here are going to get browned before we add the sauce. While that's happening, I'm going to add some ground pepper in there, get some flavor, and I'm going to add some oregano. Of course, I add oregano to everything. That's why I have these giant bottles of oregano. Okay. Give that another stir. And then those are going to simmer together and hopefully share with one another their flavors. And we'll have a nice rich base for our sauce. And to accelerate the process, I'm going to put the lid on the pan. And while that's cooking, I'll explain some of the other things we're going to do here. So the noodles are done. And as I mentioned, what I did to deal with the boil noodles, which really they're worth the trouble if you're willing to do it, but it's totally understandable and acceptable if you don't want to hassle with it. But what I did is I have a big pan and I cooked it. I got the water sort of at a very slow boil. And then I turned the heat down to medium, like about 5. And I just kind of babysat the noodles and kept them stirring so that they wouldn't stick to each other and they wouldn't stick to the bottom of the pot. And then this allowed the noodles to slowly reach an al dente or just slightly firm texture. And then once that happened, I can take the pan off the heat and then use this tongs and drape the noodles over the side of the pan. And I have 3 in the dish now. And what's probably immediately obvious is that I have more noodles than I'm going to need for this lasagna. Looks like I'll need about 3 per layer, and I have way more than 6 more noodles here on the sides of the pan. The wonderful thing is that leftover lasagna noodles, this is the advantage of the boil noodles, leftover lasagna noodles are delicious. You add sauce, you can cut them up and cook them with scrambled eggs. You can add them to, well, thankfully we're done with the leftover chili after 5 days, but doesn't make a bad addition to chili or some other kind of dish. So we'll use the leftover noodles. Then, let me put up some light on this subject. There we go. What we're going to be doing is we're going to layer the sauce with noodles and various types of cheeses. The way I've always done it, I guess the way my grandma did it and the way my mom did it, is we use Parmesan, ricotta, the part skim ricotta cheese, and of course mozzarella. I can't really give you exact measurements in terms of how much of these cheeses you need. You basically sprinkle this on 3 layers, so you don't need a ton, maybe a half a cup or something like that. The ricotta cheese, there's really only one size I found that you can buy it in, this 15-ounce size, and I usually end up using about half of it, and then have to figure out something to do with the other half, which isn't hard to do. I like that. The mozzarella cheese, yeah, you can almost never have too much mozzarella cheese. These are 2 2-cup bags, I believe. They're 1 pound. Oh no, they're 4-cup bags. So we'll use one for sure, and then probably dip into the second one to make this lasagna. So you want to have a lot of cheese. So once the meat is done browning, we're going to add the sauce and just kind of heat it through. I use, as you would see if you've watched the other episodes, I'm a big fan of Prego Traditional. That's my jam. Evidently my grandma really liked ragu. She felt that that was authentic, but I personally don't care for it. So we're going to do Prego Traditional. And usually the longer you can let a sauce simmer, the better. It will have more flavors, it'll be richer, deeper, thicker. But today was a busy day with yard work and some work on my writing. So we're going to make the sauce and then we're going to put it on the lasagna, and that's going to be okay. All right, so we'll be back when the sauce is ready to go and we can assemble this lasagna. Okay, the meat is browned. Veggies are soft, they're cooking together nicely. I just wanted to make a note when adding the sauce that you don't want to use up all your sauce. You want to have a reserve of sauce available to put on the top layer of your lasagna. So just be mindful. Oh, the other thing too is if you were cooking with a fattier meat, particularly beef, you would want to drain this before adding the pasta sauce. You don't want to have unnecessary fluids in your sauce so that you don't have a runny lasagna, and who wants like a lot of extra fat? I love fat, but there is a limit. So since we have no fat stuff here, we're just going to add the sauce and basically enough to cover the meat and veggies and have enough left over to add to the top of the lasagna. Once that's heated through, we'll be back. All right, the sauce is heated through and we're ready to start assembly. And the first thing we're going to do is preheat the oven to 350 degrees. All of the things that you have in your lasagna are already cooked. So basically the baking is, the purpose of it is to heat everything through, melt the cheese, get all the flavors simmered together and so forth. So you don't have to keep it in there a long time, maybe about a half an hour at 350 to accomplish that task. So the first layer in the lasagna is the sauce. So we're going to take half of our sauce and we're going to add it to our dish. And I use good. All right. Heat off. And you just sort of spread it out evenly. You got a nice layer there. Actually, it looks like I might have enough sauce that I could do an extra layer, which I think I'm going to do. Let's see if I have enough space. The fun thing about assembling lasagna is that it gives you time to kind of think about eating it and who's going to eat it and how good it's going to taste and what a nice experience it's going to be to eat it together. And it really is the fun of cooking, I think. You get to eat it twice in a way. You get to consume it twice, but for half the calories. Kind of a good way to think about it, I think. All right, so we've got our sauce on here. Now our next layer is going to be the Parmesan cheese. And as I mentioned before, you just sort of sprinkle it on. If you go too crazy with the Parmesan, then the lasagna tastes a little too salty. So you don't want to go nuts with the Parmesan. The ricotta is challenging? I don't know if that's really the right word. I don't like to have big chunks of ricotta in my lasagna. I like to have kind of a layer of ricotta. And this is, as you can see, it's kind of solid. So I take a fork and I just kind of press the cheese through the fork to sprinkle it. I honestly don't know how else you sprinkle ricotta. But you want to have a nice little layer of ricotta in there. You want to make sure, of course, that your hands are clean when you're cooking this dish. It's a very handsy dish. I mean, your hands should always be clean, but this one really makes it salient, the value of clean hands. So I just kind of work my way through the lasagna, pushing the ricotta through the fork. Like so. This is the part that takes the longest. After you've made your sauce and cooked your noodles. But it's worth it. The ricotta adds a really nice, light, creamy, kind of sweet layer in there. I don't quite know how to explain it, but I really love it's a cheese that's not super salty, so it kind of breaks up the sodium that's in the Parmesan and the mozzarella, I guess. I don't know. I think it's a nice contrast to the other cheeses that are in there. And evidently my grandma did too, because that's where this came from. All right, getting close here. And this will, of course, melt as well. And you have a nice layer. All right, now we have enough in here. Rinse our fingers and add the mozzarella. Which we can do with somewhat reckless abandon. Yum! Cheese! Just layer that on, nice and thick. Of course, the amount of cheese you put on of any one of these cheeses is your personal taste. If you like clumps of ricotta, go for it. If you like to go thin on the cheese, go for it. It really is up to you. It's your kitchen. Okay. Next bag. This is a little bit thicker cut. And again, it's sort of a lesson in sometimes you just don't get what you want. But the fact is, the Stones had it right. You can't always get what you want. But if you try sometimes, you get what you need. And we clearly have what we need here. No, it's not the turkey we wanted. It's not the cut of cheese we wanted. It's not the noodles we wanted. But my goodness, we're going to have lasagna for dinner tonight. And that makes us pretty lucky people. So that's just something to keep in mind anytime. But it's especially important, I think, to think about now when the world is kind of topsy-turvy. All right, so I'm going to do another layer, possibly 2, and then we'll be back to show you the top layer. Okay, as you can see, we have 1.5 lasagnas. So I think I went a little bit crazy with adding the veggies to the meat in order to enhance the flavor, and produced quite a bit more sauce than you would normally use for a roughly 9 by 13 pan. I couldn't add an extra layer because it would boil over and there just simply wasn't going to be any room. So thankfully, we had plenty of ricotta. We used it all up. Plenty of cheese and plenty of noodles. Now we have maybe 2 or 3 left over in the bottom, which we'll make short work of, I'm sure. And the lasagna freezes pretty well. So even though we have a ton of it here, we can always put some in the freezer and have more to enjoy later. The last step is to put sauce on the top. Just plain old sauce. You want to cover it up. There is my spoon here. Don't need to dirty another spoon. Just kind of spread the sauce out on the top. Like so. And then on top of the sauce, we're going to add more mozzarella and Parmesan, but not more ricotta. That ricotta is an inside cheese, and I guess you could put it on the outside, but just putting Parmesan and mozzarella on the outside gives it a more uniform looking texture. Okay, there we go. Last of the sauce on there. And there's a cat that wants to eat dinner in this room. Okay. Perfect. Yeah, can always be more perfect. All right. So now we just do the last of our Parmesan. And the last of our mozzarella after that. And then it's ready to go in the preheated oven at 350 degrees. And we'll cook it there for roughly a half an hour. You kind of just want to keep an eye on it. It's probably never going to take less than half an hour, but it could potentially take more. With this thick cut cheese, it's a little bit hard to say how long it will take to get the inside nice and soft, but my money's on a half an hour. Looks like we're going to use up the last of the cheese, which is fine. This is going to be pretty tasty, I think. All right. So, there it is. This is lasagna. 350 degrees, about a half an hour, warm it through, serve, and enjoy. And that concludes our lesson for today. I hope that you have a chance to try making lasagna, and that when you do, you enjoy it as much as we do. Thanks for watching.